So day 3, and we're going to take a look at fire. So let's begin. So in previous sets, red revolved around dragons, and now they're shifting to dinosaurs. So our first common is PRIMEVAL Egg. It's a 1-cost unit with 500 power, and it's a dinosaur. It has the Guardian ability, and it reads, this card cannot attack or deal damage. And then it has a Ruined ability where you can search your deck for a dinosaur unit with cost 3 or less and add it to your hand. So nice little chump blocker here, and also there are some pretty solid dinosaurs in here for cost 3 or less, so this could be a decent option. It's a nice searcher. Moving on, we got TERRITORTOPS. It's a 4-cost unit with 2500 power. It's a dinosaur, and it has the Guardian ability, as well as an effect that reads, while you control 6 or more shards, and this card is exhausted, your opponent cannot attack unless they are attacking this card, and cannot target other units you control with spells or abilities. So something you'll notice whenever we're going over these dinosaur cards, the units and spells that revolve around dinosaurs, they have some conditions like if you control 6 or more shards, if you control so and so more shards, get added effects, right? This one's really good, and you're going to see some of the other ones are good too. The condition itself, not a huge fan of, especially since this is a 4-drop, and it really doesn't get any effects until you have 6 or more shards, so that's kind of weird. But anyway, if you do have this, if you have multiple of these cards out, and they're both tapped, your opponent cannot target anything to attack. So it kind of creates a little soft lock. So that's kind of cool. But other than the soft lock, I'm not so sure if this card would be played. Like I said, that condition, being a beefy guardian and then also stopping things from being targeted is okay, but it needs to be tapped. So at first glance, I thought this card was really cool, but after reading it a little bit more, I'm actually not a huge fan of this one. Now we're taking a look at BRONTAURIAN BAMBINO. It's a 2-cost dinosaur with 1500 power, and it has a Ruined ability that reads, you may destroy target damaged unit. Now I really like this one. Pretty much anything that tries to block this is going to die. It's going to take it down with it. So 2 cost, 1500 power, being able to destroy any tower is really nice. And then the added benefit, if they try and get rid of it, you can most likely take something down with it. So it's a pretty good common. I like this dinosaur. So next we're looking at Primeval Roar. It's a 2-cost spell with Instacast, and it reads, deal 1500 to target unit. Then if you control 4 or more shards, you may exhaust target shard and opponent controls. So pretty interesting here. Dealing 1500 is pretty decent value for a 2-cost, and then you get the added benefit of possibly exhausting something. Not bad. It's a good common, but does it warrant being played? I don't know. I think the more you play it, I'm thinking the exhausting the shard isn't going to really be a big thing, especially if it's your opponent's turn. They'll most likely be able to respond to that effect before you get really any benefit from it. But I don't know, I guess time will tell. Now we're taking a look at MEZOZIAN HATCHLING. It's a 1-cost unit with 500 power, dinosaur, and it reads, other dinosaur units you control get plus 500. So not bad. Having 2 of these on the board will allow the other to get the plus 500. I don't know, this could spiral, especially if you have something like Great Behemoth alongside it. I could just see that being pretty nasty, but yeah, it's obviously better if you have multiple copies on the board. If you have 2 or 3 of these on the board, you can get some pretty terrifying dinosaurs. Next up, we got BOOSTERSAURUS. It's a 2-cost unit with 1000 power dinosaur. It has an arrive ability, or whenever this card declares an attack, target fire unit you control gets plus 1000 this turn. This is probably one of the best dinosaur options you have in here for sure. Being able to give something plus 1000, and then every turn also being able to possibly even boost this unit up by 1000 is just good on its own. So I like this one for sure. Now we're taking a look at MEZOZIAN Raptor. It's a 3-cost unit with 1500 power. It's a dinosaur. And it reads, this card costs 1 less to play for each dinosaur unit you have attacked with this turn. While you control 5 or more shards, units your opponent controls with cost 2 or less lose their abilities. So pretty cool effect there, the one that's contingent on you having 5 or more shards to completely, eliminate cost 2 or less units and their abilities is pretty powerful. The first part, the cost 1 less to play for each dinosaur unit you've attacked with, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely not bad. It seems pretty easy to get off. So I don't know. This one seems kind of cool. I still don't know how I feel about the controlling, a certain amount of cards until you actually get an ability, though. That's kind of a bummer. But anyway, next we have Horned BRONTAURIAN. It's a 4-cost unit with 3,000 power, and it's just a basic unit. So pretty beefy for 4 cost. 3,000 is pretty good. But not much to say other than that. Next, we got LAVALLOSAURUS. It's a 7-cost unit with 4,000 power. It's a dinosaur, and it has Overrun, which I thought was actually exclusive to air, but this guy has Overrun. And it also reads, while you control 9 or more shards, this card gains quickness and cannot be targeted by spells or abilities. So this is one heck of a finisher if you get into the late game. But, yeah, I mean, needing 9 shards for it to actually be kind of useful, I don't think it warrants a spot. Although it would be really cool to drop this on your opponent on turn 9. Now we're taking a look at VOIDFIRE Shadow. It's a 1-cost unit with 1,000 power. It's an elemental, and it has an arrival ability that reads, the next spell you play this turn costs 1 less to play. So this is pretty cool. We've seen this with Light. They have it in unit form where you can play it, and then the next gear you play costs 1 less, and now this one's just spell. So this is a really good card, I think. For 1 cost, it already has 1,000 power, which is nice. And then on top of that, it has a pretty good ability. So, yeah, this one's pretty cool. I really like this one. Now we're taking a look at MEZOZIA, the Primal CALDERA. It's a 2-cost augment location, and it has an exhaust ability that reads, dinosaur units you control get plus 500 this turn. So pumping up your dinos. And then it also has an exhaust. Sacrifice this card. If you control 4 or more shards and a dinosaur unit, deal 1,000 to target unit or target face-up tower. Interesting here. The plus 500 is nice, but I guess in comparison to the other 2 location cards that we've seen for water and air, I think this one is definitely one of the weaker ones. Being able to deal 1,000 to a face-up tower seems good, but at the same time, if it's face-up, it's one of the towers that takes more than 1,000 to destroy it. So, yeah, this one I think is a little lackluster in comparison to the other ones we've seen. Now we're taking a look at MEZOZIAN OPTERYX. It's a 5-cost unit with 2,500 power, and it's a dinosaur. And it reads, this card costs 1 less to play for each dinosaur unit you have attacked with this turn, so similar to the other common we looked at. And then it reads, while you control 7 or more shards, units your opponent controls with power less than this card lose their ability. So this is like the bigger version of what we saw, but it requires more shards. Yeah, so, I mean, the thing that I find weird about this mechanic is they have ways to bring it out for cheaper, but then you don't get anything out of it unless you have more shards anyway. So cheating it in for lower costs really doesn't even matter because you're not going to get the full utility until you actually have 7 shards. So, yeah, I mean, the effect is pretty killer. Anything with 2,500 or less power is losing all of its abilities. That's really cool, but I don't know. All this late game stuff, certain requirements, I don't know. It depends on what the format does. If the format is slower and you're getting to the 10 shards every game, then red's looking pretty strong. So our last common was one of the ones that I did in my spoiler. So if you want to go check that out, it'll be on the channel here. It's Jurassic Strength, 1-cost spell. Neither player can add to the queue in response to this card. Target unit gets plus 1,000 this turn. Whenever a dinosaur unit you control destroys an opponent's tower while you control 3 or more shards, you can add it back to your hand. So, it can recycle itself. Not bad. My overall opinion of it whenever I was doing the spoiler review was it wasn't that great, but anyway, it's there. So moving on to rares now. Our first one is Destroyasaurus, 3-cost unit with 2,000 power, dinosaur. It has an arrive ability that reads, you may destroy target damaged unit, and if you do, this card gains quickness. I really like this one. Red has that low-cost quick play spell that deals 500 damage to something, I believe. And then this guy can come in and then destroy it and then gain quickness. So it's a pretty good finisher. It's a solid choice, and it can be searched by that little common egg that we saw. So it's searchable within the deck, which is nice as well. So now we're looking at JURASSTIC Swipe. It's a 2-cost instacast spell that reads, as an additional cost to play this card, exhaust target fire unit you control. It deals damage equal to its power to another target unit. If you exhausted a dinosaur unit and control 4 or more shards, return this card to your hand. This card's pretty good. Being able to just completely recycle this by just exhausting something and then having 4 or more shards is really nice. Being instacast is super cool too. It's a really good card. I really like this. Solid rare. And our last rare is HERDMOTHER'S Formation, 3-cost spell that reads, add 2 target fire units with the same cost but different names from your discard zone to your hand. So I think this one's actually a little lackluster. Just getting back fire units I don't think is that great. But I don't know, especially also for the 3 costs. So I don't see this one being that good, but could be wrong. So moving on to the super rares, we're taking a look at the Arbiter for this element. We got Blazing Arbiter, 6 cost, 4,000 power, like all the other ones. It also has that effect where you can reduce its cost by tapping a number of fire units you control. And then it also reads, units you control gain quickness, and then ignore the effects of your opponent's fire tower. This effect, I think, is probably the best one out of all of them. We haven't seen light or dark yet, but as of now, this one is just dirty. The air one, by giving overrun, is pretty nuts, but if this card sticks for a turn, you can bring out a lot of little weenie dinosaurs or even dragons. Like, this doesn't need to be played in dinosaurs, and it's nuts. So this is super good. Really like this one. Now we're taking a look at Primeval Shockwave. It's a 5-cost spell with instacast, so hefty cost there. But it says deal 2,000 to all units. That's also your units, so keep that in mind. And then it reads, then if you control 7 or more shards, exhaust any number of target shards your opponent controls up to the number of units dealt damage this way. So this can be pretty devastating for sure, especially turn 7, especially if you're dealing damage to, even more than like 4 units, 4 or 5 units. Ooh. So, it's really hefty cost though, and you really don't want to play it until you have 7 or more shards. So, it's a really devastating effect, but at the same time, I don't know. These cards are so hard to predict. I really want to see how they play test in draft. It's going to be really fun. I'm really excited to play with these. And our last super rare is Herald of TYRANTUS. It's a 5-cost unit with 3,000 power. It's a dinosaur, and it has an arrive ability that reads, you may destroy target damaged unit. So similar to the 3 costs we've seen. And it said, whenever this card destroys an opponent's tower or unit, you may put a dinosaur unit with cost 4 or less from your hand into play. So being able to cheat out some dinosaurs here is pretty cool. 5 cost, kind of hefty, but 3,000 power is nice, and then its effect, I think, also warrants it. So, very, very cool. This can be a nightmare for your opponent if it sticks around for more than 1 or 2 turns. So the Argent for the fire element is BRONTAURIAN HERDMOTHER. It's a 6-cost unit with 3,500 power dinosaur, and it reads, this card costs 2 or less to play while you control 8 or more shards. This card cannot be targeted by spells or abilities, and then also whenever a dinosaur unit you control is put into the discard zone, you may deal damage equal to this card's power to target unit your opponent controls. So a lot of things to unpack here. The costing less makes this card super good, extremely late game, bringing it in for a cost of 4, not being able to be targeted, and then also dealing 3,500 anytime a dinosaur is put into the discard zone is pretty devastating. Pretty good pick. The only question I have for dinosaurs is, do they have enough protection to get to the late game? Because if they get to the late game, it's pretty much over. You really have to, go aggro on dinosaurs for sure. Because if they get any of these big beefy things out, I don't know how you're going to overcome it. So this is pretty cool Argent. But can you live long enough to actually get this thing out where it's going to matter? And now the secret rare for the fire element is TYRANTUS PRIMEVAL Ruler. It's a 10 cost unit with 5,000 power, and it's a legendary dinosaur, so you can only run one, and it has overrun and quickness. And it reads, this card costs X less to play, where X equals the total combined cost of dinosaur units you control. Ignore the effects of your opponent's towers this card destroys. Units your opponent controls with power less than this card lose their ability. So when I was originally going over Red, I thought the dinosaurs were kind of cool, but they were a little lackluster. They had to cheat things in, but you had to wait a certain amount of time until things actually got abilities. Then I read this card. This card is one of the craziest cards, I think, in the game of Argent Saga right now. It's got 2 great abilities in overrun and quickness. You can cheat it out to essentially cost 0. On top of that, anything it destroys tower-wise gets negated, and your opponent's units that have less power than it all lose their abilities, and it's pretty much going to be everything. This card is so nuts. So nuts. Like, I think you have to run green with red just so you can run Vabriel's Final Gift to search this guy, because this is one of the craziest cards out there, man. If you have any kind of way to protect this, from like a Corona Shard pop or anything like that, man, this card's insane. It's insane. And last but not least, we're going to take a look at the new champion, which is RENNA, Feral Warrior. So she is the champ, and she has an exhaust ability that reads, if you declare an attack with a fire unit this turn, put the top card of your deck under this card. If it was a fire unit, you may deal 1,000 to target unit your opponent controls. And then it reads, put 2 cards from under this card on the top or bottom of their owner's deck in any order. Put a dinosaur unit from your hand or discard zone with cost equal to or less than the number of shards you control into play. This champion is really good. I think this really helps dinosaurs a lot. First of all, it really meshes well. The exhaust ability does with dealing damage to something, because they have multiple dinosaurs that come in and destroy things that are damaged. So that's a nice thing as well. And then on top of that, her second effect, by putting 2 cards underneath it, and then being able to cheat something from the discard zone or your hand into play for essentially free, is pretty nuts. So this is a really, really good champion for dinosaurs, and I think they needed it. But that's all I got today for you guys for Red. I hope you enjoy. I'm really interested to see what you guys are liking so far. Which element you think is strongest? Let me know in the comment section. All right, guys. See you tomorrow.